Hello YouTube, this is Ben Gessel. For this video, I'm not going to have any notes beforehand, but I'm going to talk a little bit about a subject that I haven't really talked as much about yet. So, other than music composition, and French horn and piano, and other things I've talked about so far, and there's still a lot of subjects, a lot of areas of interest that I haven't talked about yet that I have a huge amount of interest in. So then some of these videos will be coming out in the future, bit by bit. So this subject area, I have some reservations regarding putting some of this out there. Not as much as maybe some subjects, but it's very easy to misunderstand some of these ideas, some of these things I'll be talking about. But I think I'll, being able to see my face, being able to see my expressions, and that sort of thing should make what I'm saying make a lot more sense. So I'm going to be talking today about my thoughts about different countries in the world and different people in the world. And I know that this is, of course, going to be a very sensitive subject. So I'm not going to be very critical of any country other than, of course, certain governments, because anybody who is a decent person will. Some folks have some real grudges, but most anyone who has a decent nature about themselves will recognize that there are good people in every country, and that it's not always a question of this country is good, this country is evil. That's not something that they'll agree with, but it's just kind of a question of what makes some folks think a little bit differently than other folks, that sort of thing. And so I could talk about this for days and days and days. So I'm gonna try to, as much as possible, sum up some of these thoughts. Okay, so thanks for sticking with me so far. This all needed to be said. Trust me. And there's all kinds of YouTube videos about this. So I know everybody's talking about this, more or less. Maybe if it's not necessarily as specifically just a world overall thoughts on different people in the world. Incidentally, one more thing. This is also a subject area that's often used in comedy. I still think it's a great subject for comedy. As long as, it's good to be able to laugh at yourself and your own country just as much as a different country. That's, I think, a very healthy thing, so long as, the jabs aren't particularly, well, there's, again, the reason why I'm trying to be very respectful here is because I understand the sensitive nature of what I'm talking about. Let's just start with the Middle East. It's the middle of the world, old world. It's an area of the world that continues to have a lot of conflict, and a lot of folks are very, have their binoculars on the Middle East, almost more than anywhere else. So start with nation Israel. So before I go any farther, I'm going to repeat myself. I'm not going to say anything unkind or anything of that nature, and no matter what anybody else is saying in the world. It's a very crazy world. Israel, almost more than almost any other nation on the face of the earth, probably, well, Israel may of all nations, of all peoples, specifically the Jewish people, have probably had just a well, it's hard to think of a people that have been persecuted as the Jews. Yes, you can talk about genocide and many other people having a lot of stuff, but so they're one of the people that I think has had. Okay, so anyway, I'm talking about in so many different areas. There's a lot of folks that are really, it's an emotional subject for a lot of people. For me, this is what makes the Jewish people distinctive. As I've known some folks, just a few, really not too many, But the folks I've known, be they of different religions, but from Judaism to other, secular or whatever. Um, so this is what makes, I think, Jewish people, distinctive, and um, to me, it's kind of like what makes someone Jewish. So there's very much a feeling of it's still a patriarchal culture, but it's definitely more. Um, I don't know if I want to use the word progressive, but it's more scientific or secular than probably most other Middle Eastern nations. Jewish people are often very secular, even though they have a very strong culture that's religious, of course. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot of deep thinkers, a lot of real thoughtful people that are Jewish, and psychologists, musicians, philosophers. I mean, the country is rich with, it's overflowing with very very bright, very sensitive souls. It always has been that way. It's a remarkable nation, Israel, and I have um, deep ties to Israel myself. At least I have relatives that are Jewish, and I basically love Israel. But again, it goes without saying, the governments are often very corrupt, and so and then of course, there are a lot of things that endear the Jewish people with many Europeans as well as other folks from Africa, and there are some Arabs that like the Jews and other folks throughout the world. Um, so anyway, so Israel is a very important nation to me, and again, I'm much more fond of Israel than I am as a whole, than I am anything else. Um, and yeah, I have a lot of connections there. Going on, I'm gonna kind of go through this a little quicker. Lebanon, not too much, not too. I don't know anybody who's from Lebanon. Sure, fine. Syria, same deal. I know there's a lot of world events going on in Syria. I tend to think of Syria along similar lines. Well, Lebanon and Syria, I tend to think of them oftentimes in the same train of thought as Israel. That all those nations often are somewhat westward, or the more a little bit more modern looking. I don't know. There's a lot of folks that are Syrian that are very good people, I'm sure, but they're very uh, feel maybe ties to Europe and that sort of thing, or to modern world. Um, Turkey is a country that is very mixed ethnically. A lot of different areas. Has a huge history. It's at the center of the world. Um, it's they have all kinds of people that have come in and out of it, and so I don't know. Sure, I have mixed feelings about the country, but they tend to be a bit more positive than negative. Um, but there's some real issues with Turkey, and other ethnicities, which I don't need to even talk about because you guys know about them already, probably. So I don't really want to get into it, but yeah, the Kurds and the Turks, the Armenians, the Turks, and the Greeks, the Turks. Just to name three different conflicts, and so I'm aware of all these things, not just the Jews versus, or the Israel versus Palestinian, or Israel versus the Muslim world kind of thing. The Turks they find themselves having one foot in the European arena and one foot in the Middle Eastern Muslim arena. Um, so, but yeah, overall, I do think well of Turkey. Iran is a country that I feel like I it's I don't know. I tend to think pretty positively of the Iranian people overall, but it's a country that has really kind of distanced itself from most every other country in the world, and it has. I truly believe the Iranians have their own agenda. The Shiite Muslim, and the only other Shiites, for the most part, are certain Iraqis, which are near Iran anyway. But people are bright, good people. A lot of young people want to be friends with the West, Americans. There's worldwide a growing surge instantly, of course, of people that are saying we want to be friends with other people. We don't like governments, but we just want to be friends. And I think that kind of sentiment needs to keep growing. It's true that young people in Iran are by and large very good people, and I feel very close to them. And it goes without saying, from India to Europe, a lot of countries between them were kind of Indo-European, so there are a lot of similarities that we share ethnically. But aside from that, the Iranians, they had Zoroastrianism, which a lot of folks believe influenced Christianity, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of cultural similarities, and a lot of folks. It's just a question of, do you notice the differences or similarities more, or how much I don't know. There's all kinds of things you can say about Iran, but overall, Iran, I think the government has its own kind of thing, its own interests. They don't really super allied with anybody else. Not even ultimately Saudi Arabia. I think they have their own kind of own system, their own priorities, and they might be very isolated from the West. But I think at the same time, I think of them as a very distinct nation that is anciently very connected with, again, India and Europe, that sort of thing. But just they have their own thing, But I like Iran. I know it's very extremely patriarchal. I know it's extremely brutal, but I think they'll be fine in the long run. Saudi Arabia, it's extremely patriarchal, very traditional, more traditional even than Iran, and that's saying something, or at least the two are comparable. I am uneasy about the Saudi government, but they've been very friendly with America. But what is our media tells us that's a good thing. I don't know. I don't agree with that anymore. I don't agree with a lot of. I'm very suspicious about a lot of things these days, and so I don't know. I don't know. I just know that the Arab people, every single Arab person I've known, has been a really great person. And I do feel very close to Saudi Arabia and the Arabian people in so many respects. Maybe they're a bit more boisterous or aggressive than a lot of people, most folks. Particularly, of course, I'm talking more about the guys, but that's it's understandable. There's some things we know about, and I believe in the Bible, and I know that there's we have some insights about the Arab culture even in the Bible. And I don't need to get into that right now, but Saudi Arabia, the Arabs do have a well, you could say fearlessness, but I'd say just kind of I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and they're just out there, and more so than almost any other people, and wildness, but it's kind of it's a little bit tempered by they still know what's right and wrong, and so. A lot of Arab youth, when they come to the United States, they just want to party. Yeah, because it's not as strict as their home country, and that they have that in them, very much so. Dubai, I know, is a different kind of place. I haven't, of course, been there, but it's kind of the Las Vegas of Saudi Arabia, I've heard, but so to speak. Anyway, Oman, Yemen, Kuwait, Bahrain. All of the other countries around the Arabian Peninsula, I'm going to kind of say, more affluent, kind of like Dubai. They're all kind of, Yemen's maybe a little different, but they're smaller countries. Let's see, let me see if I can name Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Yemen. I feel like I'm forgetting someone over there. Okay. Anyway, let's see, Jordan, Palestine. They're always the folks that are always right up having issues with Israel. But again, every single Palestinian I've ever talked to has been a great person. It's the Palestinians in the United States, I think, that are probably a little bit more friendly to at least Americans. Over there, I imagine it's a lot different. But it's probably just a lot of government stuff. And there's a history to this, and it goes without saying, Israel and Arabs are going to be kind of duking it out for a while still, I think. But I don't know. Anyway, so it was great. I love it when I see Arab and Jewish folks getting along. I want to see more of that all the time. Definitely, I think we all do. But any other nations in the Middle East. I'm also going to include North Africa. Um, oh geez, Iraq. To me, I've realized more and more that Iraq is kind of ultimately a divided nation, and as much as I hate to say it, perhaps there will come a time when we should just divide up the country between and have a Kurdistan in the north. I am very sympathetic toward the Kurds. If there's any people in the Middle East other than Israel, that I'm very, very close to, I like the Arabs as well, but I feel very close to the Kurds. As not that I have anything against the Turks, but I like both groups. But I'm very sympathetic toward the Armenians and Kurds. And the Kurds should have their own country. They really should. But make it Kurdistan, and maybe give the southwest part of Iraq to Saudi Arabia. Syria, maybe give the northwest part to Syria, but it's mostly desert for Syria and Arabia. So Kurdistan's, and maybe Iran might want a chunk too. Might as well give Arabia some water. Give Arabia some of that. And if Arabia and Iran want to duke it out, whatever. But Arabia in particular, any water, they could use some more water. So I'd be more in favor even of Arabia having the Tigris and Euphrates, but because Iran has lots of water, they have mountains and all kinds of stuff. So Egypt, I like Egypt. I know they've had some issues, political, whatever, but Egyptian people I think are awesome, great people. I've loved every single Egyptian I've ever met. Haven't met anybody from Libya. Verdict's kind of out in that one. The only Libyan that I've ever heard of was Gaddafi, and there's YouTube videos on him. Libya has this connection with Italy, so I know that the mafia has there's probably something going on there with Libya, but this back and forth thing across the Mediterranean Sea, sure. But I haven't, again, Libya, I'm pretty neutral, but I'm sure they're fine people. Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, again, have never met anybody from this area of the world. There's a lot of negativity, of course, that we hear about those folks, whether folks from those countries in France or whatever. The Muslim thing, okay, I know. But I know there's a lot of great folks over there. So, I'm very open-minded to, meeting people, having friends in that area, that sort of thing. So, but there's a lot of negative media about that area of the world, Northwest Africa. Yeah. I'm pretty neutral. Again, if I haven't met anybody from a country, I'm pretty, I just haven't met anybody from that country. So, Afghanistan and Pakistan, we're getting toward a different area of the world a little bit with those guys, but, Afghanistan, I think very, very highly of in general. Yeah, I do actually, and there's some tough guys over there. I think, I like Afghanis. They're really good folks. I think a lot of different tribes over there. You have all kinds of different tribes, and you can get more specific about different tribes. I think of them as some of the toughest people on the face of the earth. Tough. They're tough, and I think they're really good people overall. A lot of them are very, very principled. Pakistan I'm not quite as fond of in general, but I'm sure there's a lot of great people from Pakistan as well. And again, we just hear about a lot of negative news media about the terrorists and everything from Pakistan, and you can pretty much name the countries that Yeah, so if not Pakistan, then Somalia or something, I think that's about it. Oh yeah, well, Armenia, I love Armenia. Azerbaijan, I haven't met anybody from Azerbaijan. A little bit more neutral about there. Those guys, Georgians and Chechens, have more connections with Russia, so yeah, I'm pretty neutral. I know Stalin from Georgia. Whatever, Anyway, the other stands. This is more Central Asia. I'll talk about those guys in a bit. Getting into India. I'll mention India next. I also love India quite a bit. Had a roommate who was from India in college. There's a lot of people in the world from India, so if you say you love India, that's great, but that's a huge chunk of the world's population. So there's a lot of, India is almost like a subcontinent. It's almost another world in itself. There's so many people there. There's so many different um, languages and different, actual different kinds of people. There's a nation of India, but so it's pretty diverse in a way culturally. The Gujarati, Marathi. Half these groups. I'm probably mispronouncing them. I know about the Telugu folks, Telugu, Tamil, more the Dravidians, of course, and then other groups. Of course, the Hindi, which you have the religion kind of stems from those guys north, um, and the I don't know. You have Kashmir, you have the Bengalis for Bangladesh, Assamese. I'm probably forgetting a ton of folks that I know about. There's some tribes, of course, like the Punjabi, Pashtun, that are kind of the border between Pakistan and India. In general, I think a lot of folks in the United States, more in bigger cities, are becoming more familiar with Indian people and their culture, and I just see the Indian people as very positive, good people, and very everyone knows it's not just a matter of being. One of the first things you think of is the nonviolent, um, just very friendly, kind of kind nature of the Indians. There's a lot more to them than that, but it really, it's true. I mean, a lot of vast majority of Indian people are very, very good people. Some of the best people on the face of the earth, in my opinion. And they've had to deal with a lot of stuff. There's still a little bit of anti-British sentiment. Yes, I know, but yeah. So for good reason. But I think extremely well of India. So I mean, I would support India definitely. And again, kind of like Iran, they have their own agenda. They're not always. They're very. They work with the United States and Europe and Japan and all those other countries, but I know ultimately they have kind of their own thing, which I think is fine. India is a good country, and I think the government's also very good. And so they're a good example to the rest of the world, in my opinion, of what a great country should be. And there's some things that are so tough. There's a lot of things. It's not a perfect country, but anyway, I think they have a lot going for them. I really do. Anyway, so you can mention more about call centers and things. I know. Overall, I still like the country a lot. So okay. In Bangladesh, they're poorer, but I kind of see them as well, I think of them in similar lines, but maybe they're just not quite as in good of shape as the Indian people. Going to a little bit different area of the world. Well, we can hit Asia here now, the rest of Asia. Let's do Central Asia. So, Kazakhstan. I have not met anybody from Kazakhstan or Tajikistan or Turkmenistan or Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan. Or I've never met any Tartars, or I've never met anybody who's Tuvan, more toward Russia, and I've only met one person who is Mongolian. So there's not really a whole lot I can say about that area of the world, other than it's in the middle of Eurasia, and you're talking about some people that probably are not very numerous in the United States, so we just don't know a whole lot about them. And so, I'm sure that those guys are very familiar with Russia in particular, but also China, and the big boys that are around them. But I think generally pretty well of them. But they're people that have been very kind of more untouched by the modern world, somewhat. Yes and no. But I like them. I like them as a whole, the people. But they have some very old customs that they've kind of held on to that are kind of different. Kind of like the Afghans are really into horses. I know that stuff. So kind of out in the steppes and stuff, steeps. So China. Well, we're getting to East Asia now. I actually like China probably more than most people, the majority of people. But it's a country again that's a little bit lockstep. There's a fear of being um, you follow. It's like a follow the leader country, very much that way. And if you are not going to follow the leader, you're going to be in trouble. And so um, that's one of it's not the first thing you think of, but it's a big deal when it comes to the family and the government and that sort of thing. It's a very patriarchal, very traditional uh, country, and generally communist countries tend to be that way. Mm, um, for better or for worse. We often think for worse, but there actually are some good qualities that come from maintaining traditional values, and we still have a lot of traditional people, of course, in the United States. But it's just that democracies also can foster some things that aren't so healthy about a country. So more, I'm still pro capitalism, pro democracy. That's a different deal. So getting back to China, um, I love the Chinese people. I know it's a huge country, a lot of different people there. We're talking mainly about the Han Chinese, and then there's that love of tradition or the honoring tradition, or not going against the flow. You do what you are expected to do. There's very much that kind of culture there, but there's also, in addition to that, there's kind of a lot of things that are very artsy and beautiful, and they're thoughtful people. It's easy to talk to someone who's Chinese once they can trust you, but it's very easy to talk about uh, ideas and artistic things and kind of just life habits. It's kind of the Buddhist thing is a lot more concerned with one's thoughts and internal spiritual life, and um, much more so that kind of stuff than anything necessarily theological or anything having to do with theological truth. That's more, I see that's more of a Western idea. But so there's a lot of folks that are Chinese. Again, once they trust you, once whatever, they'll really open up. It's great. Again, they're great people and very humble people. Many like just farmers and workers there. So again, like India, I think very highly of the Chinese, but I just know that the government, I don't approve of the government. I never really have, at least in my lifetime. And um, because the people are so willing to respect the government, I just think the government's abusive to the people. I'm just going to say it. I don't agree at all with what the Chinese government has done. Um, they've made some smart choices, but no, I don't. No, no. There's a lot of things that are very wrong with the government as well. And if I was in China, I might get in trouble for saying that. That's how. It's just the way things are. And so, anyway, and going on to North Korea, even more so. Everything I mentioned with China, you know, people on the West Coast or in big cities are very familiar. I think more familiar with Korean culture, and so North Korea, being the bad boy, the two at least with their government. Almost, I can't think of hardly any other country in the world that's more oppressive to the people than the North Korean government. But I love the Korean people. I see them sometimes in a similar light with the Chinese, just a little bit more northern type. I know you have the Manchus in the north, and you have the Cantonese in the south, and the Han Chinese in the middle, and you have all the other groups that are kind of smaller, more mountains and Tibetans, they should be in their own country, in my opinion. Again, they're kind of different. The Koreans, I just love South Korea mainly, but I like all the Koreans, but I just don't like the North Korean government. I'm the same as most anybody else in the West, in America, that way. But the Korean people are very good people, very disciplined, and it's hard to sum up all my feelings here. But again, I feel very close to the Korean people, and just like the Chinese people. And the Japanese, I know, are kind of the different folks. These days, they're seen in a very different light. I just think that the Japanese, there's something about them that to me, it just seems, I don't know if I want to use I don't know if I want to use the word Caucasian or European, but there's something about them that makes them very distinct from other Asian countries, other East Asian countries. It isn't necessarily a lighter complexion, or maybe having more facial hair or whatever. Sometimes it's something like that, but it's a bit more of a, they've often been thought of as being more militaristic or aggressive compared to some of these other East Asian countries in the past. maybe kind of like the Mongols, just in very different light. But I like Japan. I just know that they have a distinctiveness about them, a little bit different than again the other East Asians. More like the Koreans, I know, closer to Koreans. But we're talking about, when we're talking about East Asia, and again this goes, it's you see this in certain other countries and for the West of Asia, but the Iranians, for instance, are very intelligent, very sophisticated people. For instance, and Japanese, like Koreans, these are some really smart, really sharp folks, and so I mean, like you can't. There's hardly anything that gets past them. I mean, like you're able to grasp anything you talk about. So there's a lot of, I think Japan's a fascinating country. It's a great country. I wish that they had more land. I wish that they had more fruit. The fruit is prized in Japan, I know, but they're very healthy people. I wish that fish didn't have all the pollutants that it has these days, and I wish that Japanese people could just keep everything going like they used to be able to do. I worry about some things over there. The dolphin thing is a different deal. I know it's only some people are doing that, but to me, I'll mention this a little bit with American Indians as well, but perhaps it's a bigger deal with American Indians. But um, I understand a lot of times what's going on over there, and I just anyway. So I love Japan. I love all those countries. It's just the North Korean government and the Chinese government that I don't care for. I think that most people would feel that way, and it's just a matter of having the means to change things and actually kind of get something done. I do remember Tiananmen Square. So Vietnam, I know, is very similar to southern China, but distinct a little bit. So I think Vietnam is a bit more of a more laid back version of southern China, more relaxing. Every single person I've ever known from Vietnam has been great, either pretty good to amazing. People, just really good people. Cambodia, I'm extremely fond of the Cambodians. I see them as being definitely a little bit more distinctive. They have more connections sometimes with Filipinos or um, Malaysians maybe. They have more Malay about them, but definitely more distinctive than they're different from like the East Asian. I know. But even Vietnamese and Filipinos oftentimes have a lot of there's a lot of crossover there. But when you get into that Southeast Asia arena with Philippines, also you get a lot more that love of karaoke and big family get-togethers. India's kind of the same way. So very friendly country. But I love Cambodia, Thailand. Well, the Thai people are very like the Indians are kind of very friendly and a little bit more adaptive, or they're a little bit more peaceful, not aggressive people. Sometimes though, that's turned into something. There's other things I won't get into necessarily, but the Thai people in particular really need to. I understand that there's certain issues. Again, I won't get into right now, but I'm aware of certain issues in Thailand. The Thai people just need to, they know what's right, and they need to, take a stand, for what's right. And that goes. It's the same thing throughout Southeast Asia. But when you have a bit more of a easygoing and personality, just individually. I speak for myself. There are some things that sometimes when you have to stick up for something that is right. That has to happen. Burma, I haven't. So I've known some people from Thailand, and especially Cambodia and Vietnam. I haven't never met anybody from Laos. I've never met anybody from Burma. So those countries I know are maybe just a bit more isolated. The Burmese just start getting a little bit more into the East Indian kind of appearances and everything. A little bit more rounded eyes rather than Asiatic features. Anyways, so a little bit of that. Malaysia, I've only met one lady. In Indonesia, I've only met one young man. from those countries, so I can't really say a whole lot about those countries. Really, I just know there's a lot of traditional things. It's just a question of where you're at and that sort of thing. A lot of big cities. I know there's Singapore, and there are a lot of big cities in Asia. Most of the world's population is in Asia. And the Pacific Islands, Taiwan. I like Taiwan. I love the Philippines. Mindanao is the one place that if you're white, you don't want to really end up there. It could be bad. I know in Polynesia, the oceanic areas. Well, before we get to that areas, those areas, that's Papua New Guinea. And that area, I think, is extremely isolated. So, I'd be more nervous with the bugs than anything else. But there's just some tribes that are really, they have definitely not modernized. So you're definitely stepping out into the jungle when you're in Papua New Guinea, for sure. For sure. It's pretty crazy. But Australia is pretty much a desert version of Britain. It's just more, the cities are different. Australia's really a great country, I think. I like Australia. And New Zealand is the same thing. You have the Maori culture, which is great. Great people. So let's talk about the Maoris, back to the Polynesians. I mean, talk about really great people. I mean, it's hard to think of people. I mean, I've known some really friendly, kind, good people, but talk about just the number. I mean, I have never met anybody from Polynesia I have not liked. Every single person I've loved. And I'm familiar with in the past and older times, and maybe they had some battles and things. All those things are way in the past. I mean, so I think just like a lot of respects, what the Japanese have tried to be more peaceful, and they've done, I think, a really good job being a more peaceful country now, and India and even South Korea, their love of freedom and that sort of thing. The Polynesians, I think, are people that we can throughout the world look to as good examples of how to live and how to be and how to just be kind to everybody and share things and that sort of thing. Latin America is the same way. I mean, there's a lot of other countries we'll get to in a bit. Along the same, American Indians, very very good people. But so I think well of all those nations. So Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, they're all great, great countries. Let's see. Going to Europe for a bit here. This is gonna be a longer video. I've personally known Russians. I think Russians feel compelled somewhat. Some of it's just internal, what they're made up of. Some of it's whatever. The Russians have a. It's important to them that this is more the case if they're Russian, particularly, I think, but it's I think it's just a country that values emotional toughness and not being vulnerable more than most countries. I mean, and so I think that's always something that's been going on, in the general Russian psyche. It isn't that necessarily that they want to be aggressive. Maybe sometimes actually they do, but there's kind of maybe either a defensive thing or it's kind of a proud kind of thing. They think, and so there's still a lot of nationalism, and it's a bit I don't know. It's complex. I understand a lot of times where Russians are coming from, and it's not necessarily always something that's political. It's kind of a us against them thing, or it's kind of for some people, they're just trying to have a good life, and that's why they maybe want to go to the United States. They feel like they might have a better life, and so that sort of thing. But I don't know. I like Russia. I just know that they can be a little bit surly, a little bit intense sometimes. So I understand. I understand where that's coming from. I do. And the more Russians that I've met or I will meet in the future, hopefully the more I'll understand where that comes from. But I know there's also kind of there's those rivalries. We know about the rivalries. We know about India and Pakistan. We know about Israel and Arabs. We know about Japan and Korea and Japan and China especially. So then we know about Russia and Germany, or Russia and Turkey, or something, some other country like that nearby. And anyway, going on. So I can mention more about the Russians, but it's the government. Everybody's a little bit. Definitely, we're watching Putin, and we're like, we've got our eyes on him. We got our eyes on Vladimir. What else do we do? He has a lot of great qualities, as far as we can tell. As far as we can tell, but I don't know. So Poland is great. Every single person for me, Poland is just like it's just Eastern Germany in a way. It's a different country, but I wish that there wasn't such a divide between the when communism, when the Iron Curtain fell. There was like this. I remember feeling all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. There's kind of a sense of social isolation, I think, that Central and Eastern Europe felt from the West. And when the Iron Curtain fell, all of a sudden there was, a lot more a sense of friendship and kinship after that point. And I want that to continue. And so, Poland and Germany, I think Poland and Czech Republic have always been very close, but Poland and Germany, I don't see any reason why those countries can't be even better friends. And so I love Poland. In Czech Republic, it's the same thing. I've never met anybody from Slovakia, and I've met very few Ukrainians, and hardly anybody from Romania or Moldavia. Most countries in Eastern Europe, Serbia and Croatia and Slovenia, Macedonia, Bulgaria, Albania, Hungary. Most of these countries, I just haven't met too many people from these countries. They've always been great people. But if you go in, I'm betting if you go to Eastern Europe, you go to these rural areas, they'll be more. It's more traditional. It's more of a traditional kind of feel about different places, and I imagine there's a lot of suspicion of the modern world. There's a lot of things, for instance, in common with that they might have with the Amish people in Pennsylvania that came from Switzerland, that sort of thing. But then the Amish don't want anything to do with a lot of the not so great things about the modern world in the West. And so I imagine a lot of people in Eastern Europe and Central Europe are very much the same way. Goes without saying. And these traditional values, family values that I know they have, they want to preserve. Makes perfect sense. So getting more into Europe further. So the Baltic states. I've met very few people from the Baltic states. Just one Lithuanian, I think, maybe two. Nobody from Latvia or Estonia I can think of. Scandinavia, to me, is very, very familiar just because a lot of Americans, there's a fair amount of Americans that have Scandinavian ancestry that I've known. And so this is just, they're very familiar. The people in Scandinavia sometimes are kind of, it's kind of a sort of humor, but but there's kind of you see the differences and the subtle differences. Sometimes not so subtle differences between different countries: Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway. But essentially, we're talking about Germanic people that at one time were ferocious, or really interested in gems and gold and getting a lot of stuff. Even maybe not necessarily killing for it, but just stealing. And the more gold they could get, the better. Kind of like the the earlier version of pirates or Vikings. So they've gotten totally got 180. They're nothing like that. They're nothing like that anymore. They're completely peaceful people and peaceful cultures and people and so there's I know there's like the the heavy metal rock thing, the pagan turned to Odinism and all that stuff. But essentially, Scandinavia has had Lutheranism and Christianity for a while. We're not talking about people that are especially angry right now. Some, yes, but you might see more things going on, which I don't need to get into right now. But you might see more things involving Scandinavia in the future. But essentially, it's kind of similar with other areas in Europe. What my train of thought is that at what point you put your foot down and say enough is enough. And the Scandinavians are getting there, but they haven't got quite got there yet. The main sources of frustration, I would think, in Scandinavia, in a general sense, would be any Russian threat or threats that Russia might pose to Scandinavia. I've heard of, and of course, some of the crazy radical Muslims, like was that saying in Scandinavia that are, and so my hope is that those radical Muslims don't ruin it for everyone else. But there's some crazy stuff going on there, crazy stuff. So, the Scandinavians will figure it out. They're some of the sharpest people in the world. But I know they're kind of wry, and they're kind of, especially a lot of folks like the Swedes are a little bit more, nice, relaxed people. But again, there's this question of how much, at what point do you say enough is enough, and boom, take action. So we'll see what happens. Germans have always been a tad more intense. And I myself have some German, more Bavarian ancestry, and so I love Germany, but I guess it's just one of those things where it's you try to be very specific about what you love about Germany. But I mean, look, it's one of the most important countries on the face of the earth for so many reasons. I don't even need to get into it all, but very detail-oriented people. Overall, very scrutinizing. I mentioned the Jews in Israel. The Germans have certain similarities in intellectual respects. A lot of scientists, a lot of musicians that come from Germany, and some deep thinkers, very very deep, just like in Israel. And so again, I have very deep roots in Germany and that sort of thing, more from the south. Switzerland is I don't know. I like Switzerland. It's anybody who doesn't like Switzerland needs to get their head examined. Switzerland's great. Austria is wonderful, awesome places. Italy, Greece. Italy's just the only problem with Italy. In the south is the mafia. We all know this. They could use more employers, and maybe Venice could have some of the water cleaned up around there. Italy's problems, economics, sure, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad a situation. And Greece could use more employment as well. I like Greece, but I just know that it's an old country, a lot of old stuff. Like Italy, it's hard to modernize. A lot of things. Just a lot of old stuff. You take a history class, you read. Studying European history, that's what you're studying. Greece and Italy a lot of times. So Spain is great. Actually, I love Spain. Every single person. So Italians, I love Italians. I love Spanish people, especially. Portuguese, I've only met one family from Portugal, or really one person my age when I was younger. It's just Portuguese Americans, basically Americans. So, and in French, everybody talks about the French. I personally like the French people. I just know the Parisians in particular, the snobby ones. But the French are kind of liberal. A lot of times a little bit more relaxed about certain things. the Belgian, well, the Dutch as well. But despite some things I don't agree with, regarding certain, again, lack of certain morals in the more modern times, especially, I love France. I mean, all the arts, particularly the arts, cooking, of course. The Dutch also are great people. Belgians. It's really easy for me to understand the Dutch people as well and how they just are. And the British, some of the other areas of ancestry, they're goes without saying I love England more than most any other nation in the world, but English people have had huge impact for good and for evil, depending on what you're kind of talking about in different places. But they're among the biggest colonizers in the world, and so. But yeah, I mean, you can say a lot of good things, a lot of bad things, but it's hard to think of a nation that's has more influence than the British people have been, the English. Um, um, they won't always tell you what they're thinking, keep a lot of things to themselves, but they'll try to be at least polite and respectful. That's their older culture. I hope they don't ever lose any of these qualities. Definitely don't think they will. But I know since the 1950s and the 60s, since the Beatles, and there's just been a lot more of that kind of wild teen thing, which I think needs to just go away. And I think the British need to return to what the kind of people they were. All of them. There are many people British that are still more, way that they should be, but all the British people should be. They shouldn't forget. They shouldn't just discount a lot of the ways that they used to be. And the United States is the same way, same way. I sometimes think that we've been the bad examples for at least the English, but probably for other folks as well. Too much, I don't know. So, the kinds of things that the communists like to think about. So, you follow my train of thought there. Unspoken train of thought. So, the Scots and the Welsh and the Irish. Of course, I love these folks. They're fiery sometimes. The hot-tempered thing is very well known. More the Irish-Scottish thing, but the Irish are some of the funniest, just most, I don't know, say, fun-loving people, spontaneous. I feel like I'm very robotic sometimes compared to the Irish. I don't know, but I love Celts. They're great people. All the Celtic countries, even in Brittany and France, and Iceland. I know I haven't met anybody from Iceland, but I know they're big boys, and yeah, big boys. A lot of stuff. So, great country, I'm sure. Getting to Africa, I'm trying to paraphrase this a little bit because there's a lot of just thousands of tribes down there, and it's hard to keep track of everything. But essentially, Ethiopia is one of the countries I'd like more in Africa. I think well of Ghana. Here and there, you have places where there's more of a sense of not just Christianity, but or anything good, good traditional African beliefs, but you have more of a sense of people really are trying to be respectful and kind, and it's hard to keep. And there's so many different tribes, but the things that so it's hard for me to look at each country in Africa and say yes, no, maybe so. But I just know that it's, if anything, and I'm just going to kind of talk about the continent as a whole. Africa is the one place in the world, almost more than anywhere else, where you just need people from the rest of the world need to keep trying to help instead of take away from that country, from that continent. Most people, Africans need all the help that you can get just to, deal with the mess that was left after colonialism, or even some things that were in existence before even colonialism. It's a very isolated country or continent. Africa as a whole. Nigeria, all know about the people that are trying to make an extra buck or two from the scams, which honestly, some people are just trying to make a buck or two. It's nothing. So there's just a lot of poverty. There was that saying. And Togo, Benin, I mean, there's not a lot. I've met fewer numbers of people from Africa. One person, for instance, from Cameroon, which is a great lady, and Cameroon's a great country, from what I've heard. There's a few people maybe from Ghana, um, Ivory Coast area. One person from Mali. He was a decent guy, but more soft spoken. A young woman from Sudan. Yeah, Sudan's having issues. We all know that. I met a guy from Somalia. I think Somalians are somewhat misunderstood. There's a lot of crazy things going on there, but kind of like a lot of areas in Africa, that ultimately just what they ultimately want is just we all want, good things, and there's just a lot of violence down there, and a lot of instability, and there's a very much mistrust of the West as well, of course. So, going down, moving south a little bit, I know AIDS has been a huge issue in Southern Africa, and it's become a health crisis. But no matter how it's spread, it's just there's a lot of things. It seems like whatever problems the rest of the world has, Africa seems to have 5 times as many problems, and coming from it's just that's why I think ultimately coming from the perspective of there will be a point at which we won't have to suffer anymore. I really hope that Africa is better off in the future. That's probably the one area of the world that needs the most improvement. So in South Africa, I know that's another story. What can I say? I mean, it's just a question of how well the Swazi and the Zulu and Xhosa and other African tribes can get along with the Afrikaners, Germans and Dutch and English down there, and yeah. So, but it's I don't know. I have mixed feelings about South Africa, but I've known some good people from that country, both white and black. More white, but Madagascar, I had never met anybody from Madagascar, or I met a few people from Kenya. Kenya's actually a really cool country, with nice people. Tanzania, I think it's pretty similar. Never met anybody from Rwanda. There's a lot of countries in Africa I've never met people from yet. So I tend to think more in terms of sympathetic kinds of thoughts with Africa in general. Want to help out as much as possible, but it's hard to know where to start. It's just hard to know where to start. But I'm involved in so many things all the times. But anyway, moving on to a few other areas of the world. So I think I touched on the old world pretty well here. I can mention more things about different countries. I encourage you guys to if you have any comments, feel free to ask as many questions as you want. Try to get to them. So I tend to think pretty highly of Latin America in general. It's just that it's American Indians that in general I feel oftentimes is the closest to in a kind of emotional way. But in a certain way, Europeans in South America and Mexico and Argentina and Chile, it's easy to see that they're European, Italian or German or whatever. And I know that there have often been accused of being among the more affluent folks, and this kind of that haves and have not idea there, and throughout the Latin America, and that's a pretty deep. I know it runs pretty deep down there, and so I don't know. I think my hope is that there will continue to be cooperation, amongst those two general groups. I just know that the Spanish at one point were not. Well, that's another story. I'll get into that later. But the Spanish colonists were. There's definitely still some very uneasy feelings there, but sometimes. But so Brazil is kind of every man for himself. It's a country that seems like it's a little bit needing of law and order in some places. From what I've heard, depending on where you're at, of course. But that's why we had the Fast and the Furious in Brazil. They picked the right country for that kind of movies. So, well, I mean, it's rough. It can be a rough country. You have the baddest, most painful bugs in the world, pretty much. I just see it as kind of a tough guy kind of country in a way. In a way, like Australia is kind of similar, but Brazil is the jungle. And anyway, Brazil is kind of like everything. You have everything there. You have African, you have American Indian, you have European. Heck, you might even have in the big cities probably Asian now and other people. So probably have some East Indians. I don't know, some other folks that Suriname or those kind of countries just to the barely north of Amazon Delta, and so you just have all kinds of people in Brazil. So it's kind of a what can you say? Yeah, it's a big country, a lot of different differences, and the Amazon is completely different than the coast. Again, so I think feel more positively, even though there's a lot of problems again with drugs and everything in Colombia, Venezuela. But I love Colombia, Venezuela. Of course, the governments can be kind of crazy. Love Peru, Ecuador, absolutely. Those countries. Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Paraguay, accents, Paraguay. So moving into Central America, there's a lot more poverty. I feel like sometimes in Central America, and still a lot of times in Mexico, and so it's hard to have a smaller geographical area that's mostly jungle and not a lot of infrastructure, not a lot of capital. It's hard to have those countries, be healthy. And I just think the United States needs to kind of keep trying to invest in that area. The United States has a huge influence in Central America and especially Central America because Mexico is kind of a little bit more stable, a little bit bigger. It's a bigger country, but the better the United States is, the better off Central America is, and so it's the two are kind of connected. Now Caribbean, I know they've kind of gone a different route, and you have all these different countries. Jamaica is different than Cuba and Trinidad and Tobago, and so they're kind of touristy and pineapples and I don't know all that stuff. But coconut, pineapple, banana country. I know countries. I know it's just everyone knows about Castro and I think what did he die recently or something, and everyone knows about Jamaicans and Rastafarianism, and so there's all these little subcultures in the Caribbean, and so I have mixed feelings about the area in general, but sure they're generally fairly positive, but basically Haiti and Jamaica are going to be more like West Africa, and Cuba is more like Spain, kind of. So Dominican Republic is not entirely sure, kind of a little bit of both or something. Puerto Rico is just kind of part of America. So of course America and Canada. Well, I love Canada. Just know that it's a huge country, and talking about North Pole all the way to the border of the United States. Now, I sometimes think Canada should just be part of the United States. Why not? But then it's nice having another country that does things a little differently, that we're just a lot like. So it's nice having that other country to the northwest. So, United States. Last but not least, the United States. Well, I am a Northwestern person, Washingtonian by birth. Well, not more by most of my life. I was born in Indiana, but I can tell you anything you want to know about Western Washington. It's kind of, West Coast is more liberal than Mountain West. Mountain West is very conservative, family oriented, very much so. Very, very white, of course. Or if not white, you're probably American Indian or Mexican or something in the Mountain West. And then Midwest, if you're not white, you're probably black. And of course, there's the Sioux Reservation. Midwest is kind of traditional, more to the plains, and you get more to the cities. It's a little bit different. But Yeah, I like the Midwest. Um, and South is everyone knows at the South. I don't need to actually say anything, but it's the South. So yeah, for better or for worse, and the Northeast. Well, I'm not really keen on. I'm not a New Jersey guy, and I'm not a New York guy, and not a big city Northeast Metro guy. But I certainly like New England. I just know that there's, you know, it's a little bit different up there. I think people tend to keep it themselves somewhat. More in the east, northeast. Depends. Pennsylvania, I think I'd probably actually like more than. I've been up there a little bit, but I think I'd probably be more of a Pennsylvanian or maybe upstate New York person than New Englander. But maybe like I don't know. It all depends. I don't know. I'm not one of those old school Boston Brahmins. I'm not a super traditional type. You know, Anglo-Saxon American from New England, or I don't. Not one of the I'm not one of those establishment, not from one of those establishment families. So I know there's still lots of that up there. I tend to click a little bit better, I think, with it might be even the Amish in some respects, but I just wish that they were more open to music at least. I don't know. So good music. So anyway, this is one of my more longer videos. So I mentioned all these different areas of the world. Try to be a little bit more positive, and by all means, this is just the tip of the iceberg of how all my thoughts about these countries. I just wish that I knew more people from different areas of the world. I feel like if I met more people from different countries, that I'd be a bit more aware of all these things that I'm not aware of right now. I just here and there, I'm very aware of Europe, of course, and to a certain extent, East Asia and these places, Latin America maybe, but again, a lot of areas of Africa and Central Asia, just very isolated places. Indonesia, I just don't know as much about. Anyway, feel free to leave any comments you have below, and I will catch you guys later.